Thank you, Microsoft Surface, for being a sponsor of the show. Need a device that helps you get stuff done, but is also perfect when you want to catch up on some fun, like streaming live sports or checking on your fantasy team? Check out the latest member of the Microsoft Surface family, the new Surface Pro 6. Just take the keyboard off and use it like a tablet, or snap it back on and use it like a laptop. With up to 13 and a half hours of battery life and the new 8th gen Intel Core processor, it's everything you love about the Surface Pro, now even more powerful.
Basketball is very good. Jimmy Butler is actually a good teammate. Sabonis is the most important front court pacer. De'Aaron Fox is better than Donovan Mitchell. Basketball is very good.
Hello, everyone. This is the Ringer NBA show. This is the group chat.
It's a good impression of Chris.
Did I do that right? Is that good?
Nailed it.
That works?
I think you had to go a little more. Hello! That's pretty crispy.
Yeah,
There you go.
With me today, Paolo Uggetti,
What's up?
and our own personal Time Lord, Haley O'Shaughnessy.
I'm going to do justice myself. It's going to get ugly.
Haley was attempting to, what do you do with sage? You bless the room?
Oh, you take sage and you light it and you put it around the room. We're not having a podcast with Chris today, so we thought, new beginnings. Let's sage the room.
Good vibes.
I put up an evil eye. I was going to read their horoscopes, and nobody else is into it but me.
You do that for me every day, by the way, so it's already a thing.
All right, I don't know what any of this means. But yes, Chris Ryan is not with us. He called me out because I'm not planning to re-sign with the Ringer this summer. Called me the B word.
There you go.
And he had to take some time off. But we are here today to talk about some hoops. We love hoops at theringer.com. We're going to get into some teams that are trending upward, some teams that are trending downward, for a little up and down later in the show. But first,
Let's then do some self-analysis on if we're trending upward or downward.
that actually might be more interesting. Yeah.
Our reviews on this podcast.
What would you say Paolo is?
Oh, you already know where I'm going with that.
Terrible.
Don't lob. Don't
Absolutely
give me a lob
terrible.
like that.
Paolo's the sons of emotional journeys. So last night, I guess the big game was the Raptors win over the Warriors in that late one.
Didn't feel big.
Yeah, Raptors 113-93 without Kawhi for the second straight game, and they blew off a team off the floor, one of the top teams in the Western Conference.
And no Jonas in the second half.
No Jonas.
And on a back-to-back.
Jonas hurt his hand because I believe Draymond Green hit him or something.
Did you see him? He was yelling.
Yeah, he
and
did
how
not,
much pain he was.
He did not seem happy about what had just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of takeaways from this one, I think, just from a purely basketball standpoint, simply because we know that the Raptors are really good. I guess, if anything, the Warriors at full strength weren't able to keep up with a team without Kawhi and kind of crystallize that maybe the Raptors are the best team in the NBA right now, even better
Do we
than the
think
Warriors.
that this says more about the Raptors or more about the Warriors?
I think it says more about the Raptors. I mean, I think the Warriors, it's weird how they choose to have good games and not so good games. There's not a rhyme or reason to them. Whereas with the Raptors, I think they're very concentrated on displaying this machine that they have where it's just a bunch of guys. And they're a deep team that with no Kawhi, they're going to just be running all over the floor and super efficient and just have a really strong team.
Are you saying with the Warriors there's less at stake in the regular season?
Yeah, totally. And that's what I was going to say too. It may come back to look like nothing. I mean, it's a regular season game and it's one of those things where we focus so much on what the Rockets, for example, did last season in the regular season. And is this going to be the Raptors story too, where they're going to have an amazing regular season, but then when it come to playoff, what are we? They're not going to be able to
move the franchise if that's seriously the case.
No,
that would be so
honestly,
sad.
I was going to say that it feels like we're maybe downplaying this a little too much. It is a pretty big one for a team without Kawhi to beat the full strength.
On the second night
Raptors.
of a back-to-back.
Yeah.
And no Valanciunas.
Right.
Yeah, I just think it comes down to expectations, which is what I think you're getting at. It's just the Warriors, if they drop however many games they lost with Steph and Draymond now, it doesn't really matter because we just assume that they're going to be there in the finals at the end of the year.
At the top of the West.
Yeah, we still have a lot to learn about this Raptors team. I still think there's some flexibility in terms of who they are and who are their guys and what they could do. Do they match up against teams? Do they shuffle through the center lineup? Seems like they're settling on Serge Ibaka as the pretty much set center over Jonas. But I mean, Kyle Lowry, a guy who pretty much was shooting poorer than most players in the NBA this year,
He was Marcus Smarting it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hardcore. He
Yeah.
was like, I forget what I put it.
He steps up and he looks like the best player on the floor.
I'm so confused by him all the time. Like, I don't know what to make of him. Like, I don't know if I like enjoy watching him play.
He looked like Kyle Lowry in the playoffs, but in the early regular season.
From last year, not 2 years ago, where he just completely disappeared.
But I don't know. Like, I obviously...
No. I'm saying that before, when he wasn't shooting right, he's looked like every playoff series I've ever seen him in.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, I think it's interesting to think about his role. Is he like the second fiddle to Kawhi, or somebody like Pascal Siakam? I mean, he should be, right, because he's the more experienced player there. But I'm wondering, like, when we watch when the Warriors played in Toronto, that was, I think, more of a game that was like emblematic of how it may go in the end, because they were just like exchanging blows. So I'm just wondering if Lowry's going to be able to step up in that kind of scenario.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, he's kind of the perfect complement to Kawhi.
Right.
It's funny that like he and DeMar DeRozan had such this tight bond and whatever, but I think from a basketball standpoint, I can't think of another better player to go with him, because it seems like either of them can score 30 on a given night when needed, or they could just take a step back and like maybe take 5 shots, which is what I believe Kyle Lowry had the other night. It's just, there's a lot of flexibility with this lineup. And I mean, we've talked about this before, and we've written this on the site. There's just, they could really do anything. They're so amorphous, and they have such great depth that they can really just like kind of form into whatever you need on a given night.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting also that I looked this up. Kyle Lowry has a better net rating than Kawhi Leonard. So maybe he should be the MVP.
Wow. They have done really well without Kawhi. Like, that's the other thing, too.
Yeah, they won all but one game.
And I think that goes a lot to their continuity, because it's more or less the same team that they had last year. So it just has transferred over to this year, and they just like look amazing.
They're 7-1 without Kawhi, and the one loss was obviously that Bucks game.
Right.
Well, speaking of Kawhi, I did want to get into this Brian Windhorst story on ESPN.com the other day. It was pretty much just pointing out that the LA Clippers, a team who can open up 2 max contracts this offseason, has pretty much been all up in the Kawhi, KD kind of just their ecosphere. They're just they're going to, what was it, 75% of the games, I think is
roughly 75%.
I wonder, how do you get to 75%? Did somebody like tabulate that? Like, did they have their own like Zach Cram at ESPN just kind of like keeping an eye on them?
Well, they need to keep track of their expenses, their expense reports, so it gets tabulated that way. No, but I think it was interesting only in so much as that the Clippers are seeing themselves almost as big free agent players.
Right.
And while we might not look at them as such, given their history and given where they are currently as a team that is having success, but not necessarily on the level of what we expect from the Warriors and whatnot, I just think it's interesting that maybe they might be able to kind of break through there.
Maybe they know something that we don't know. Maybe they have some confidence after the Jimmy Butler situation. But for me right now, they're still like the 4th or 5th team I'd consider in a free agency situation this summer, especially for those 2 players specifically, because Kawhi's been linked to LA, KD's been linked to the Knicks. So for this report saying that the Clippers are watching them and are highly interested, that's like saying I'm after Chris Hunnam and Idris Elba, and I like roughly 75% of their Instagram captions.
Well,
like, it's
you're
just,
in LA, so they're around technically.
If you're around,
I'm kind of like all for it. Like, what do they have to lose? Like, yeah, at the end of the day, they're the Clippers, or they have that baggage, right, of being the Clippers of the past. Like, there's no harm in trying to do this. I think that maybe we are going to look back and be like, wait, did we really think the Clippers had a chance to get Kawhi Leonard and Kevin Durant? But the reports keep getting like stronger too. Like, it seems like, not everybody wants to, maybe if they come to LA, join the Lakers. So why not join an organization that now has Jerry West, for example, leading it?
The Lakers or LeBron?
Well, I mean, yes, that's more. Lakers or LeBron. To me, they're like equal. So I don't know. It would be fun. Like, they clearly have like a strong core of a team right now that, like if you're going to swap out like Tobias Harris for one of those 2 guys, like you immediately become like a top half of the West.
Or if you're getting one of them and you keep Tobias Harris, that's still a super strong team.
Exactly.
I'm not mad at the Clippers. I'm just not sure like how big of a deal it is that they're going after them. So is everyone else.
I look at it and I almost think of LeBron simply because when he went to Miami, what was it, 8 years ago now? It was kind of a blank slate for him. And it seems like based on those comments that Katie made to the in Bleacher Report and kind of what we know about Kawhi in terms of like what he wants and what he's rumored to want.
Do you know anything about Kawhi and what he wants? I'm not like asking to accuse you. I'm genuinely asking, like, has he ever said anything?
He definitely doesn't like holidays.
Other than that he doesn't want to talk about Christmas.
No, but it does. I mean, I thought it was interesting. The person that I think that has been closest to Kawhi or has provided the most insight is Chris Carter. Like last year, the Hall of Fame wide receiver, where he was pretty much like, I know Kawhi. Like I think they grew up like in the same area or like something like that. And he was basically like, he doesn't want to go and be like another guy. He wants to kind of start his own thing. And I do think the Clippers present that more than anything, right? You could pretty much go and be anything there. You could take that franchise. It's almost like the Knicks thing without the baggage of history or even like the James Dolan situation. And I think back to like when Ballmer bought the team, like everyone kind of suspected, well, maybe he'll move them to Seattle because that's where he's from and he spends a lot of time there still. But I look at it and I'm like, the biggest lure of that team is the market. They're in Los Angeles. Yeah. And even though the Clippers historically have been kind of like the sad sack franchise, I don't know if guys like Kawhi Leonard really think of them in that way because in the past, I mean, we're getting close to like a decade where they've been on the same level as some of these like major franchises.
The Knicks. Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. The Lakers. And the other thing is that speaking of Ballmer, I mean, I'm not sure how much a player specifically, I'm not sure where he ranks ownership, but like think about all the Sarver stuff going on in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And the Bulls. Right. I mean, owners really matter. And like Steve Ballmer's given no indication that he's like going to do anything that will jeopardize the team.
And he's unique in the fact that like this is like his pet project. And like, there's nothing standing in his way. Like, he will literally do anything through whatever money he needs to succeed in this area. And it's not like out of like, oh, I need to make the money back or anything. Like, he's doing it for the fun of it. And like, that almost is more like, that's more powerful, if that makes sense. And like, you know, that's why I think it's like, it's a very interesting, they're going to be a very interesting case study. And they're clearly prepping for this in a very like, obvious way, and like it doesn't seem like they matter that it's this obvious because they're going to 75% of the games.
I mean, if these are the type of guys who want to be wooed, and I think like back to like college recruitment, like all these guys say that, you know, this is kind of similar to that process, and guys like LeBron weren't really wooed in college. I think this is the type of thing they're seeing now. And while it is incredibly creepy that they're just sending like executives to games that might like talk to them or not, I don't know how that goes.
Right? Are
like,
you allowed to talk to them afterwards?
So they're not allowed to talk to them. I think this may have been mentioned in the story, but I think they're not allowed to talk to them. Right. Air quotes. I don't know if that's a thing that happens or whatever, but I know, but it's just about, I think, the FaceTime,
just
right?
being there, which is creepy.
The FaceTime from far away.
But I'm wondering, maybe that's where like
you look up at a free throw and someone's just watching you and winking.
It's just Jerry West staring back at you.
I'm wondering if this has been common for a while now, and we're just now kind of like seeing it more in the open, and if that's going to be a thing that we hear more of now, going into the future. Like, are people going to start showing up to, you know, Pelicans games? I don't know.
Ringer, let's find out. Why don't you send me to roughly 75% of Miami Heat games, and I'll let you know what it's like living down there for a third of a season.
Right now?
I just want to be in Miami right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was at a game, I think it was the Warriors game, and like the Clippers did pack that front row. It was like Ballmer, it was Jerry West, it was Lawrence Frank. I think Rich Paul was there, and they made sure that Rich Paul was like sitting with them. So, I mean, shouts to Steve Ballmer for doing what he can, but like maybe be a little bit less of a creep. Moving on, the other big game last night was one Anthony Davis. Speaking of potential big movers in free agency, that's a transition.
Let's go.
Anthony Davis goes off for 44 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. They still almost lost it in the last second, but Russell Westbrook surprisingly decided not to go at Anthony Davis with 5 fouls underneath the basket and decided to dish it off to our guy, Alex Abrinas.
Your guy.
My guy. I would contend that the pass was off the mark, and perhaps if it was a little bit more pinpoint, he would have been set up in a position to make that shot, but he missed. And they lost, and the Pelicans got probably one of their biggest wins of the season. They always manage to play well on national TV. I guess the only downside of that is they're never on national TV because they're never all that good.
Tough.
Paolo, you wrote about this one last night for TheRinger.com. I mean, you, what was the big takeaway?
I mean, it was interesting. Like, the ending was enough of a takeaway, even in like that last minute, because they had a fight. Like, they had a I think, a 10-point lead with 5 minutes left, and they just kind of like let it up because like if Anthony Davis is not doing almost everything or Drew Holiday, like they're so shaky. Like I think one play that really stuck out to me was where AD had a floater, right, and he missed the floater. He went and tipped it on the one side, missed it, then went on the other side and tipped it again, and then it finally went in. Then he ran down the court, saved the ball from going out of bounds, and then it ended up like being stolen, and then Dennis Schroeder had an easy layup. So like he looked like he had gone literally just court like end to end. And like you said, he maybe gets up for these national TV games, but it's like it sucks because like I was really into the Pelicans like toward the latter half of the season, and I thought they were going to be top 5 team in the West this season. So it really sucks to like watch them and see how much AD has to do, and like you can't help but think about the larger picture. Is I guess
it seems like they can never carry momentum.
Yeah,
yes.
Whether it's from last season to this season, right? Exactly.
And to that point, their past 10 games have all been a loss-win in that pattern. So loss-win, 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 loss-win.
So
it's just like they can't seem to either go forward or really they just bottom out because mostly they have guys like Drew and AD, to your point. I don't know. With me, I've obviously been watching this team closely for a while now. It's such a slog to watch them. They came out in that first game and they blew the doors off of Houston in Houston when we all expected Houston to be the team from last season.
Right.
And I was just like, man, this is like the first time these games have been exciting. Like they just played with this like nervous energy where they could just run you off the floor and they wanted to like basically do the Drew Holiday point and laugh at you sort of thing from last year's playoffs. And that was their identity. And they finally seemed to have something, but I haven't really seen it since then. And part of it is just the injuries once again are stacking up.
But let's think about who's injured, right?
Yep.
Alfred Payton.
Yeah.
Etuan Moore.
Nikola Mirotic.
Mirotic is out. And I tried to look up for how much longer he'd be out, and everything was super vague. It was like...
Yeah, he has like he was
one
sick.
report said he'll be out till he's fully healthy.
Yeah, which is
and I was
not
like,
a good
that's
sign.
great.
Thank you.
I think it's an ankle injury.
So probably a couple games at least.
Not an encouraging sign. So on the one hand, those are what? 3 of their top 6, 7 guys?
Think about what you just said. Those are 3 of their top 6 or 7 guys.
Right.
Those people being injured should hurt, but not that much. That's the Pelicans' problem.
But
maybe one that they'll solve soon, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
I think the larger point maybe is that even if they get those guys back, like what are they going to be? Like, it's a little depressing to think about it that way, but like, yeah, like I said, I was high on the team going into the season, but I don't know, like looking at the West now, I guess it's a little more open because there's not really like a clear-cut second best team.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if they get those guys back and, like we'll talk about, like they'll add somebody at the trade deadline. I don't know what their assets are really, but then maybe the second half takes another positive turn like it did last season.
And that's the whole thing there. Just because they have in the past been willing to trade their first round pick, right? And that has been their big trump card. When nobody wants to trade first round picks, they've been willing to do so. I can't remember what the protections were on Mirotic, but they got a really good deal out of that, where they got off of Omer Asik's contract and they got a player who at this point is like probably their 3rd best player. I wonder if in this market that we're in now, where we see Kyle Korver go for about, I believe, 2 second rounders, and George Hill gets traded for essentially a second rounder and just long-term money that the Bucks wanted to give up. Mm-hmm. I do wonder if their advantage there, that their boldness that they've used to their advantage over the past couple of years, even with DeMarcus Cousins, I wonder if it might not be there this year.
Yeah.
I wonder who even is out there right now that we could think of that would make an appreciable difference.
That's true. I think that a lot of being bold has been backed up by the fact that you have Anthony Davis and you have him for right now, and you need to win right now with him. And maybe they won't be as bold because they're seeing the writing on the wall that we're all seeing, that eventually he's probably not going to want to be there anymore.
Yeah.
It's tough though, because like you have to go all in. Like you have no choice. Like if you were like a bigger market team, then you could play that off as like, okay, I mean, there's like a positive side here, but like they have to go all in for to keep Davis.
They're in the same situation as the Rockets. Go all in now because this is going to be a mess in a year or two if you aren't winning right now.
This is the window, yeah. And I would be surprised if they didn't try to make a go for it, just because I think like, yeah, they're probably like slowly looking at the scenario where Davis leaves this offseason as a more realistic thing. But like, that's the type of thing where you don't really confront it and accept it until you have to. Just because I also think it's going to be a tough sell to a fan base that's already kind of like iffy on the team. Like they're going to have to reboot again, which is, I mean, there's been so many of those since Davis was drafted. I just think like you try to do everything you can to keep him, and if he leaves, he goes. But I don't know. To that point, like, do we see anybody that can really make enough of a difference here?
Well, I mean, I think that we're looking right now at the positions that they need to fill because of injuries, right? So there's a couple point guards on this list. Before we get into that, I also want to point out that we are totally ignoring when we talk about their injuries, the fact that Anthony Davis has had quite a couple scares of late. Like before he had the 41-point game against Boston, he was questionable heading into it because the game before he only played 25 minutes. And then last night, didn't he have an injury scare too?
He went out and then he came back in, which is... I got to the point when I was covering the team in that last year that I had a spreadsheet where I used to chart every time he left games and then came back because he didn't have a lot of injuries that year. In fact, I think he played 70 games for the first time in his career, but he would just go out for like 10 minutes at a time. And then sometimes he would come back, sometimes he didn't. And so those added up because you need all the minutes you can from Davis.
And to that point, they're asking Drew and him to play a lot of minutes this
so
season.
many minutes. They're both leading the league. Well, it's Davis and then Drew and average minutes per game.
Yeah.
Davis with 37, Drew with 36.6.
And yet, even though Davis went out last night, they played him 40 minutes.
Right.
I mean, that's the issue.
Right?
They have to. I mean, it's his own quote is that I need to be almost perfect for us to have any chance to win.
It's funny how that keeps coming back. Like, that's like the one
I think there's
thing
because there's
that
so
you
many
can't
parts of it for me. Like, first of all, he's saying, I need to be almost perfect, which is basically saying that he realizes what the front office is maybe oblivious to, maybe just doesn't know what to do about. The fact that he cannot have an off stretch and the team will win. Those two cannot happen together. And then also the second half of that quote is that he needs to be almost perfect to have a chance to win. A chance. He's still not going to be enough.
What happened at the game last night? Like,
if Alex Abrinas made that three, he would not have been enough.
Good. He had 44 points. Like, he did
against
everything.
Boston. He scored 41, and they still lost by 13.
And in games where he scored 40 or more, I think this season they're only 3-2. Like, you would think if your star player scores 40 points, you probably should win every one of those games.
Yeah, I mean, I think the numbers are good when they've had everybody healthy. I think Elfrid Payton, regardless of what you want to say to him, I think he gives them enough.
Yeah.
You know, I think he moves Drew off the ball. And I think Holiday said this to someone. I'm sorry, I forgot which article it was in, but it was basically like, if you want me to basically be the best perimeter defender in the league on one end, you can't ask me to do like everything on offense, set everybody up, because as good as Davis is, he still needs someone to get him involved. He's still a big, and if only in name only. There's just a lot going on. I think that they have something with that starting lineup, but it speaks to the general point we're making, which is like it needs to be perfect, because after the top 4 or 5 guys, like it drops off considerably. The talent is just not there. They've punted a lot of draft picks in order to get these Nikola Mirotic types, and as a result, you have guys like Frank Jackson who are interesting.
It's sad because they do have a lot of people who are interesting. Randall, to me, has been playing really well this season. Even Peyton, I thought before he got injured, was having, I guess interesting is the word for it. I wanted to watch him and see what he could do in that role, but you can't surround yourself with interesting maybe guys.
Yep. And
not in a year like this where, like we said.
And if Randall plays well, they're going to have to re-sign him in the offseason, because I believe he had a 1-1, so he's just going to opt out, as Peyton will as well, and I believe Nikola Mirotic. So we'll see how it goes. You
know what they should do?
What's that?
Sage the locker room.
Oh my gosh.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this. Thank you, Microsoft Surface, for being a sponsor of the show. Need a device that helps you get stuff done, but is also perfect when you want to catch up on some fun, like streaming live sports or checking on your fantasy team? Check out the latest member of the Microsoft Surface family, the new Surface Pro 6. Just take the keyboard off and use it like a tablet, or snap it back on and use it like a laptop. With up to 13.5 hours of battery life and the new 8th gen Intel Core processor, it's everything you love about the Surface Pro, now even more powerful. All right, we're back. We're going to talk about some teams that are trending one way or another, and not talk about Domantas Sabonis for 20 minutes as much as Haley and Paolo want to.
Next time.
Next time, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, or a Vucevic hour. I actually haven't watched Vucevic lately. Is he still playing well?
Yeah.
what was that scoff?
I saw the Magic are still in the 8th seed, so,
All right. All right, we're fine.
Still hanging.
Okay, first team, the Boston Celtics, who are way up.
Yeah.
17-10, fifth in the Eastern Conference right now. 7 straight wins, which I believe is the longest streak in the NBA. Last night was a particularly interesting one where they almost dropped one to the Wizards in DC, and it essentially became a duel of Kyrie Irving and John Wall.
Yeah,
and you're not going to believe this, but Kyrie Irving won that. I think why they're playing better is pretty obvious. They turned the starting lineup over to the Marcuses, improbably, and yet here we are. They have Smart and Marcus Morris as 2 of their 5 most important players. It just seems like the team, unfortunately, because of injuries, has almost figured out its hierarchy. Does that seem
it's
right?
got injuries, but also fit earlier in the season. You're going to lean on the 2 people you know that you can lean on. And it's the Marcuses.
Right.
Marcus Morris has been the most clutch player on their team.
He's been surprisingly consistent.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to me that they needed sort of this early season wake up call for Brad Stevens to finally be okay, I relent. Let me not try to do maybe put our 5 most talented guys out there and let me do more what's the best lineup for us right now. And that I wonder how that will shift over the course of the season.
That's what I was going to say. Do we think that this is going to last, or do we think he's going to try to reincorporate when health comes back what the original vision was?
I think he'll try to reincorporate Hayward back.
Yeah, and
I
to
think
that point,
Jalen just makes a lot more sense off the bench.
Yes, Horford has been out for 2 straight. Right. Gordon Hayward has been out for 2 straight. I believe he's just sick. Gershon Yabusele, which is a tough name to say. I wrote sick/soft in my rundown. So, it depends on how you look at it. No, but there's just too much talent there where you can't, right? These are just these are all of their players. It's almost impossible to not put in a player that's going to almost disrupt the flow of what they have going on.
Well, because eventually in the playoffs, that's going to bite you.
Yeah.
If you haven't incorporated your most talent, obviously.
I think it's kind of funny that at the beginning of the season, I remember after that, not to talk about opening night games again, but when they beat the Sixers and Tatum looked amazing, everybody was wow, is Tatum the best player on the Celtics? And now it's okay, no. Kyrie's taking over, and it's okay, this is his team.
It's clearly
both on and off the court trying to be that kind of leader guy, which I don't know how I feel about, but it is his team because he's the most talented player.
Yeah, and that's what I thought about when I was watching that game last night. It just seemed like it's a Kyrie team to the point where the reason why they won that game is he was just jacking, and he made that one deep one that the Wizards couldn't come back from. I think it's good and bad, and on the one hand, it seems like it makes more sense. But on the other hand, I don't know who else they're turning to in those situations. Marcus Smart was effectively the 5-man. Yeah. In that crunch time lineup. Tatum kind of comes and goes. He's obviously a talented player, but he does seem to kind of disappear at times.
He's 20. I mean, that makes sense.
Makes a ton of sense. And then you're just hoping that Marcus Morris is going to drill those kickouts, which it's working so far. I believe he's having the best 2-game stretch of his entire career. Incredible. But eventually that's just not going to go the right way. But
what about Time Lord though?
What about Time Lord, though?
I want to ask you guys, did you know that his other nickname is Boo Butt?
No way.
I promise. And listen to this. His mom gave it to him when he was little.
Wow.
She was forget someone else teasing my kid.
Nickname.
I'm going to tease the shit out of my kid, and it's going to make him tougher in the long run. And Boo Butt is on his basketball reference page.
That's great.
Wow. I don't even know what to say.
We're talking about Robert Williams.
Yeah, Robert Williams.
The rookie.
Nobody's paid attention.
In case you don't know him by his nickname, Boo Butt. My favorite,
or Time Lord, which is much, much better.
Yeah, it's really good.
The basketball reference nicknames are some of my favorite things. I may have talked about this before because I do it a lot, but my favorite one is Eric Gordon's, who is referred to as the Hobbit, which is the most savage shit, and that's something I don't think anybody has ever called him ever.
But when you say it, you know what I mean?
Did you know LeBron's, not to get off on a tangent here, was one of his 10 on that page is the Little Emperor?
What?
The Little Emperor?
Yeah.
Who called him the Little Emperor?
I have no idea.
That's not real.
I'm reading that right now. Braun and the Little Emperor.
What?
Yeah. I've never heard of that in my life. That's there you go.
That's what I refer to Chris as sometimes too.
Oh, we should have been shitting on Chris a lot more this whole time. I forgot.
There's still
Should we?
15 minutes or so here. Okay, let's move to a team that's down here because we like negativity and shitting on things, apparently. The Los Angeles Clippers, 17-10, fourth in the Western Conference. Same record, mind you, as the Los Angeles Lakers, a team that we thought would struggle the entire year. And at one point I said wouldn't be as good as the Clippers. So I am not right. 2-4 in their past 6. The past 2 have been particularly troubling. They had needed OT to beat the Suns. And without Kawhi, they were blown off their own floor. I believe it was Tuesday? You were there, right?
Yeah, I was. It was Tuesday, yes.
This is an important point that we get the date down on a podcast
Tuesday.
that might not be listened to.
No, I think this is all like relative, I feel, because like they started off so strong that like even their down is, you could still call it an up. But I think,
like that. I like what you did there. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's
like an Instagram poem.
A sonnet.
Yeah, a little the caption with a sunset.
You do post some sunsets sometimes.
I do.
You post a lot of sunsets.
There's a whole like workplace culture thing at the Ringer when like the sky looks nice that everybody is granted.
Gotta appreciate it, you know? Can't take it for granted.
Right.
That's what I say. But back to the Clippers.
Did you say that? Yeah, okay. All right, the Clippers. Paolo, tell us about the Clippers.
I think their defense has fallen off a bit, and I think it's we're seeing the problems we anticipated, which is like they don't like have a go-to guy that can like bail them out. I think that, and even if when they did, which was Lou Williams in the fourth, he's injured, so they're just, I don't know, they're just going through a rough patch right now. I think they're going to be. I think this was expected. I'd never expect them to be in the top half of the West. I still think they're going to be in the bottom half of the West. I think they're going to make the playoffs though. So, you know, it is what it is.
They have to play the Spurs today, Thursday, I believe, and then they, as opposed to Tuesday, but then they have to play Oklahoma City too. So
it's not great. I mean,
the stretch coming up is tough, and then the Blazers, then they see the Mavericks, the Nuggets, the Warriors, Kings, Lakers, Spurs, Sixers. I mean, that's just, and then finally they get the Suns.
It's kind of, they're the found money team of the NBA right now, right? Everything is gravy. Like nobody expected them to even be in the playoffs this season. They intentionally signed like short-term deals and got guys on one-year deals to open up cap space for next season. So if anything, I think the work that they needed to put in this year has already been done because they've established their culture as like something that might be attractive, that they can bring things out of guys. And if I'm a star player, which I pretty much am.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
All right, I'm gonna try to pick this up here. No, but I would want to see a franchise bring the most out of guys, because if you are a top heavy team, you need to make the most of some of these fringe like.
It's been a great season for Doc.
I think to your point, I think it's kind of like the Raptors. What we're seeing with the Raptors now, where it's like they have their one star and like everybody else is so like perfect in the role and can be so effective, that the Clippers have that. They're just missing that star, which goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Even their de facto stars like Tobias Harris, Gallinari, I think those guys all fit around a Kawhi or a KD. And I think Tobias is a free agent this summer. And if you have his bird rights, I haven't looked at the math exactly, but like he's a guy, if you can sign 2 max players, even if it's like a Kemba Walker instead of like a Kevin Durant, it's Kawhi, Kemba, and Tobias. It's a pretty good team. Yeah. So I would be interested to see that. Moving on to your Indiana Pacers. They're a team that is way up right now, 18-10, fourth in the Eastern Conference, 6 straight wins. They are 6-4 without Victor Oladipo. Most of that coming against the soft schedule. But Oladipo returned last night, and they pretty much handled the Bucks in a way that I hadn't seen the Bucks being handled pretty much all season. I don't know. I'm starting to think they're kind of legit. Yeah, I mean, quick aside, I love how everybody's just beating each other. Like, Raptors beat the Warriors, the Bucks beat the Raptors, but now the Pacers beat the Bucks. It's like a weird, I don't know. It's fun in the sense that we know nothing about the regular season. Right. Yeah, it seems like the Raptors are the only team that's on most nights you expect them to win. Like, they're pretty much a sure W. Yeah. But back to the Pacers, I think we don't really think of them right in that top half of the East, but I think they're just like, they just know what they are, which like is a weird thing to say, but also underrated. I feel like in the NBA, where like they know, you know, what their system is. They I think they have this 26th slowest pace in the league, so they're not running all over the court. They're very methodical. They obviously when they have Oladipo back, they have that kind of star power that they need at the end of the close games. And, I don't know. I think a lot goes for that. Maybe we should be taking them more seriously.
I think they're definitely in the second tier, but there's the first tier, and we can't decide who is the best team in the East. And outside of them,
I think it's the Raptors.
Okay, sure, but like you said, these teams keep beating each other.
Sure.
Yeah.
If the Bucks have an amazing night one night, I'm not so sure. So but there's the Bucks, the Raptors. Put the Celtics in there. Mm-hmm. I had the Sixers in there earlier, but maybe they have to go down to the second tier. I'm not sure. They're hovering.
They have kinks to work out, I think.
They're on the bubble. But the Pacers are absolutely in that second tier.
Yeah.
A solid team that could really do something in the do something in the playoffs later on.
Yeah, and so I think the more interesting comparison is almost to the 76ers, a team that has way more top-end talent at this point, but as we saw last night, not a lot of depth. Yeah, and not a lot of depth. Like, I don't really know what to make of them on a given night. Like, on one night, they had a really interesting comeback win over the Pistons, where Ben Simmons pretty much played like Embiid. Like, him and Muscala just like stonewalled like 4 straight shots or something like that. And I'm like, oh, this is like what they can do if they figure it all out. But then Butler's out and it's Embiid and Simmons, and all of a sudden, like, there's not the right spacing and they just can't put it together. So I think there's something to be said to Paolo's point about just consistency and knowing who you are and racking up these wins. I mean, at this point, the Pacers are a more impressive team than the Sixers.
Well, I think that this has a lot to do with Miles Turner.
Yes.
Who I have been low on probably for 2 seasons. And now all of a sudden, I mean, I think that you noted that he had 2 20-point games back to back. But it's so much more about his defense for me. This is the best I've ever seen him play on defense. He looks incredible. And at the end of last season, that was their goal for him. They were telling him, you need to focus more on defense than the other end.
Yeah. Also, like, their role players, I was skeptical when they added Doug McDermott this offseason.
I thought you were transitioning to Sabonis.
No, I mean, he's been, I mean,
funny you say that.
He's been sick the last few days, but like, he's been good. But no, I wanted to kind of shout out McDermott because, like, I was very skeptical when they signed him. I was like, I don't know what this guy has left, but he's been more helpful than I think Tyreke Evans, Yeah,
Tyreek's been bad again.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think it's not great, but I also believe that he could come along later at the end of the season, and then that's just another thing that they have.
Yeah, they're just a strong team that, I think with Depot, they're much more fun to watch, but, they're not exactly known for their aesthetic.
And they're deep at guard, and I believe Windhorst reported in that same Clippers story that they could potentially move a Collison or Corey Joseph because they are high on Aaron Holiday.
Good, yeah. When they were in town to play the Lakers, he had some flashes, like, and I think they just probably want to get him more minutes.
And there are teams. I mean, we just talked about the Pelicans needing a ball handler next to Drew Holiday. Yeah. Like they need a Collison
backcourt right there.
I know. Bring Collison back to New Orleans. New Orleans legend. Okay, last team we have here, the Portland Trailblazers, Paolo Uggetti's. This is really the Paolo Uggetti All-Stars is what we're doing. They are down. They are really down. Once the top team in the Western Conference, they're now 15-13, 9th in the Western Conference. They were absolutely embarrassed last night against the Grizzlies. They only scored 83 points. CJ McCollum had 40, and somehow the rest of the team had 43. The rest of the team also shot 16 for 60 from the floor. I think the big question here is, why did you curse them, Paolo?
I don't know what's happened. I honestly don't know. Like, obviously one of the easiest answer to this is like, oh, right, that second unit that was like helping them out in the first stretch of the season and like winning them games, like Nick Stauskas was like balling.
Yep.
Like, now that's no longer the case. And it's like, okay, well, did they hit a rough patch, or is this just who they are and they need to go and make a move or something? I don't know. I don't even know if they can make a move. So it's like, I don't know. It sucks because like this is like the Blazers like story for the last few seasons. Like they just have Damon CJ, and then what else? Obviously Nurkic is that kind of third guy, but he hasn't done anything like too much to be able to carry the team through tough games like this one. I don't know. They're confusing.
I'm at Occam's razor with this team. It's basically like, wow, they're playing above their heads. Like, look at what they're doing early in the season. Then it's just like, oh, right, that's Seth Curry. And like, oh yeah, that's Jake Layman. And like,
I think Seth Curry is leading them in 3-point percentage.
Yeah, but he's been really bad on defense. Their defense in particular is fallen off. I think they're 23rd in the past 10 games, which is ironically since Paolo wrote the story.
You hate to see it.
Happens to the no. I mean, I was convinced too. They looked like a different team early on. And
now, do we think that this is a team that would make a trade?
I could see it. I mean, I think they're probably going to go back to what they've been saying this whole time, and just like if they just keep augmenting their core, it works, and then maybe they can dig themselves out of this hole. I think they only need maybe like 1 or 2 guys, and they'd probably be fine. But I don't know. Just for the sake of entertainment, I'd like them to see the break up CJ and Dame.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
Which is a bummer.
At least, I may have jinxed them, but I think the things that I wrote about, which is kind of their chemistry and their like continuity and just kind of that group that they have, at least makes me encouraged that they'll bounce back from this. Like I think some of those traits help them in a tough stretch like this, where like they won't turn out to be like the Wizards, for example, when they lose a bunch of games. So I mean, if you want to look at the glass half full, that's
the thing though, is that this is always the story of the Blazers. They have good stretches, they have bad stretches. They have good stretches, they have bad stretches. And usually it's timed out that their bad stretches come in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they do come out of this, I have no hope that in the postseason anything is going to... I mean, I just don't. Because you watch the other teams in the Western Conference, even all the teams that played last night, and there's just so many more that are exciting and have another gear. And we've already seen their other gear.
Who do you think is the second best team in the West? That's like a question I feel like it's been being talked about.
Thunder.
Presuming that the Warriors are one.
Yeah,
it's the Thunder.
The Thunder?
Yes.
I think it might be the Nuggets.
Justin was going to say the Jazz.
Yeah, no, I wish. God, Jazz. They did blow out the Heat last night, though. No, I mean, the Nuggets have been the most impressive. Like, they haven't had Millsap and Gary Harris in the past two, and the bench has kind of acquitted itself. They did lose to Atlanta, but they did beat Memphis at home, and I thought that was a really impressive game for guys like Monty Morris and some of their other bench guys.
It's the Lakers who are the second best team in the West, but I think it's as a team as a whole, it's the Thunder right now.
Your voice just got so high pitched. It was like, I don't think Paolo believes this. And then, like, as it went on, it was very clear that you believed it less and less as it came out of your mouth.
I mean, they have LeBron.
I think
they have LeBron.
the second best team in the West. No,
great impression.
Thank you.
All right, guys. I think our time here has come to an end. Does anyone want to say anything about Chris Ryan before we go?
I was just gonna say, I think that he needs to be off of all of these now.
Wow.
I think I've just kicked him off.
He's been annexed from.
I'm gonna Rudy Gobert him.
Second, you think?
Might get 2 seconds.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for another episode of Group Chat. We will see you next time.
Basketball is very good. Basketball is very good.